Hello, everybody. What's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Sutton Sanctuary Podcast. It's your host, Chase Sutton, and it's just me today. No guest on this one. I'm thinking about throwing one of these shows in like once a week, talking about just different things, maybe like some current events, just giving my thoughts on things going on. Maybe just talk about some stuff that interests me. But that's not what I'm getting into with this episode. The point of this episode is to talk about obviously the chain of events that took place, on September 10th with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I don't know. At first, maybe I guess maybe people might ask like why I would feel, the need to even share my opinions or whatever the case is. Um, just like Charlie represented, not that you really need a reason. That's supposed to be one of the beautiful things about America, and kind of the message that he spread with promoting promoting your freedom of speech, and being able to talk and have dialogue and connect and connect through words, and to hopefully try to avoid things that essentially ended up happening to Charlie. And I've watched Charlie for like probably 5 or 6 years now, and I enjoyed watching Charlie. And something I always admired about him was just like his ability to sit down and discuss hard topics, to sit across from someone, have a debate with someone that they might really disagree in views. I think that takes a lot of courage if you've ever sat down and had discussions with people about things that you disagree with, them about. If you've ever been a part of discussions like that, you could probably know how quick it can become heated or become, kind of uncivil or get out of hand. Typically, someone ends up getting worked up. So I always admired Charlie's ability to sit down and to kind of pursue those conversations. Like I said, I enjoyed listening to him. He, I've seen a lot of people that talked about they didn't even know who Charlie was before the assassination, and that's fine if you hadn't heard of him. But the reality, I think, is that a lot of people had heard of him. A huge majority of people had heard of him. I think that's kind of the reality of it. Leading one of the biggest youth, conservative movements in the United States, if not the biggest, in Turning Point USA. So I did, like I said, I was very familiar with Charlie and his work, and familiar with what he was doing with Turning Point USA. I, tuned into his show multiple times. I'd listened to him on multiple different podcasts with, a handful of different people. And so to see someone like that you follow, or I don't know, like maybe feel some sort of it seems like a lot of people are kind of talking about they feel like they had that some sort of connection to him or whatever. I don't know if I would go that far, but just someone that you're familiar with and someone that you watch, and even if you don't agree with all the time, it seems like it tries to come from a place of understanding, and at least being willing to at least sit down and discuss it, and not hide from it, and really just embodied what it meant, the freedom of speech, and how important it is. And so to see, whenever I opened up my phone that afternoon and saw the video, I initially was like, I initially was just like thought it was fake. I was like, wait a second, because then whenever you start to think about like, Charlie not even being an elected official, and um, didn't really have pull as far as like as far as that sort of like the ability to pass laws or that kind of thing. It I was just like, I think like a lot of people, I was just so taken back. Um, and just the fact that the video got out there so fast, and I know I think I mentioned that already, but it was just how quick the video got out for all eyes to see. And, I think that was like a type of video that maybe not everyone was meant to see. It definitely shows the reality, the dark side of the world, the what I believe. I've kind of discussed this before with other guests on the podcast, just talking about the good and evil. Um, People are super quick, I think, to label this like left wing, right wing. They'll jump all over the political views. They'll jump all over the which side the person was on, and then use that as, and you're already seeing it, and use it as extreme ammo to attack the other side. And I think that's a pretty broad categorization to put people under. I think it, to me, I feel like, and like I spoke about before, like I said with guests, is just like the spiritual warfare. You're seeing um, the just the good and the evil. There's people, whenever you talk about, whatever you believe, if you believe in an afterlife or whatever the case is, it's just like there's good and there's evil. Some people you just meet, man, and some people they're just they're nasty individuals. And so um I think before anyone just jumps to immediate this side of the aisle, that side of the aisle, you stood for this, I think everyone should just take a deep breath. Um, maybe kind of set the phones down, close some of the social media apps for a little bit. Sort of just, just take a minute. And I've spent the last couple of days just like trying to wrap my mind around all of it and trying to like get information that I can. And we can kind of get into, possible theories and who did it and why. And I know that's insane on the internet right now. It's the the theories are all over the place. We'll just say that for now. Um, but yeah, just going back to again, just opening up the phone, seeing this video, the horrific scene, Charlie getting shot, and then the reaction from some people who, yeah, they might, align on the Democratic Party side, but to me, I think, like I said, I think it's more of just like a good and evil. It's evil human beings that are, the ones that are to celebrate and the ones to laugh. And, like the guy didn't have two kids and a wife. And um, the that's kind of what I think took me back the most, because even if like I didn't expect, I know there's so many people that disagree with some of Charlie's ideologies or some of his viewpoints on things, or and that's neither here nor there, and that's fine if you do. And even I did on a couple of different things, have some different beliefs about things, but still, just to witness a video of like that magnitude, and if you're familiar with like the platform X at all, and you spend any time on there, those are like normal videos. You can get out, they're like live streaming what's happening in Gaza. You can get on there and find clips of children being blown apart, and whole cities being demolished. And again, that's a little bit more off topic. Some more stuff that I'd like to get into probably in a later video, but my point is you can get onto the platforms like X and you can see these crazy different videos you can find of just murders, of some just stabbing, shootings, people getting blown up. It's a wild place. If you're not familiar with it, it's not for the faint of heart, to be on X. But those are like the kinds of videos that you can find on there, and that almost is like a daily thing. But to see a video like that surface on Facebook and be able to spread and wasn't taken down, and on TikTok, where I'm sure you're hearing about people's kids that have saw this video, and to then not only are people that shouldn't be seeing it are seeing it, but then they're also being able to see people's reactions. Some of just the nastiest works of human beings, being able to laugh about it, and being able to try to make jokes about it, and and to me, it's whichever. It doesn't matter who you voted for or who you agree with or disagree with. I feel like there just has to be some sort of moral compass that just says like, this is really terrible, and like there's no but. There's not like there shouldn't be like a follow-up with that. I don't feel like there needs to be. There shouldn't be some of the comments, like just about him following it, like the following his beliefs till the end and making a mockery of it. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't think it's like again, I just don't know if it's so much more political, as in maybe we should just step back as a whole. Maybe we just evaluate ourselves as human beings and as people, and think about, in this moment, what is important to us, right? Like, because the thing is, events like this happening just supersede, I feel like, the probabilities of something like this happening again. It was, I saw someone talking about, in reference to like school shootings, and it was like back before Columbine. It was, not so much a heard about thing, and then Columbine happens, and now after it, it's like school shootings are now just in the mix of like things that is like what's going on in our society. As terrible as that is, and I feel like events like this can cause sort of a similar reaction to, the last thing you want is for people to get an idea, or a group of people to start getting an idea that these are types of things that now are just thrown into the ether as well, and these are just types of things that we just do as a society whenever. And if you've ever, and like another thing too that blows my mind, if you really like watch Charlie's videos and you go back and don't just watch like the 30-second clippets that you're being shown online that are tried to make it look one way or another, get full context of his ideas, and even if you don't agree, it's like his whole message was just about talking and excuse me, and just like how if we get away from dialogue with one another and we get so set in our ways where we can't even discuss our differences anymore, how it kind of takes the humanity out of the other person. And, I agreed with this a lot. That was one of the first messages kind of from Charlie that I took was like, it was a video of him. I don't remember which campus he was at, but it was a video of someone asking him why he did this. Like, what was the point? Why do you do this? Why do you go around to these campuses and do these things? And he said he believes because, the minute we stop having these conversations is whenever things go bad, whenever things go violent, whenever you no longer feel like you can have conversations with, an opposing view of some sort. And you feel like you can't even talk to another human being because of a point of view, you start to devalue their life. You see them as less of a human, which then could, make you more susceptible to do something violent because you no longer are viewing that human life as important as you would if it was somebody that you had the same viewpoints as. And that's a really dangerous thing. And if you want to be honest, if you look at it as a whole, it doesn't, again, getting into the ideas of what could have happened or why later on, but it doesn't matter it doesn't matter who you think, if it was left wing or right wing, or you think it was a foreign nation possibly involved, or whatever the case is that you might think happened to him. The exact thing that he preached about, ultimately is what happened, regardless of who did it. It's just like, it's crazy. It's like the whole message of that I first saw of him talking about, once we stop being able to have these conversations and we no longer start to view each other as equal humans, we can be, we'll be subject to violence and doing bad things. And then this happens, and it was just like such like, just kind of mind blown to see it. I was just like, this is exactly what, the very first message I ever saw from him was talking about something like this. And so yeah, it did take me back. I was like, I was in shock. I think and like I said, I think the people you're seeing that are celebrating or making maybe a mockery or kind of laughing about it, keep in mind that's just what's being blown into your face sort of all over Facebook. Okay, it's just being blown up for everyone to see. And as it should, I think, because you have to start to question, well, so to finish my point, it's being pushed out there, right? I think, for everyone to kind of see, but I still think you need to keep in mind that the people that are celebrating this, I think, are a very small number to the amount of people that are extremely kind of disturbed and bothered and upset by this. I think the people that are speaking out and are unhappy with the situation as a whole, I think those people are far outweighing the people that are, sort of, I think, looking for that attention and kind of, the ones laughing and making the hateful remarks regarding this this event. So whenever you catch yourself kind of getting worked up, whenever whatever the case is, or maybe you find yourself getting really bothered, as it should, and I hope that I would think that it would bother you to see those kinds of things. I would think it would kind of have that negative effect on you to sort of see someone else laughing, or again, agree or disagree with the guy completely aside, but to just see a video of that magnitude, and then to see people able to just kind of brush it off and then just laugh, and whatever the case is, if that doesn't sort of like strike you a little bit, it doesn't sort of like kind of like a double take, like, wait, you're kind of laughing, you're saying what? It doesn't, strike you as a little odd that would be your kind of go-to reaction to a video of that sorts. I think that can say a lot, and it probably should say a lot. So, getting into kind of where I was getting ready to go with, like, talking about, I think, we're talking about morality. It's such an interesting response, especially on the internet. You're seeing these people that are targeting the ones that are, they're laughing or having what most people would kind of agree is like an immoral reaction to the situation publicly. And, going after getting people fired and all these things. And it's such a like contradictory thing, because it's like on one side, and like because on one side it's like you need to have free speech. That's the whole thing, especially like that was literally Charlie's whole argument. So it's attacking these people that are, even if they're saying distasteful things online, does it still fall within our free speech amendments, right? And not saying that I agree with it, because I don't. But on the other hand of that, I feel like I absolutely understand if I'm a company, if I'm some big corporate company, and you've got employees that are making these distasteful comments about someone being tragically shot and killed publicly in front of his children, and they're willing to publicly voice their negative whatever comments about the situation, laughing, joking around, whatever that case is. I can absolutely see where a company's like, okay, we don't want you as a part of our company, and we're not going to allow that on a moral level. And I completely agree with that, right? Like, completely agree. And then, you start to think, like, I'm having a hard time whenever I see these people that are getting fired from their jobs for saying these crazy things publicly after this has happened. Like, I'm having a hard time feeling bad for you, Like, because even if you didn't agree with the guy, and again, not that I always did, so, but this, I can't relate to where you're coming from on like a moral, just like, oh shit, human being level reaction to seeing this. I can't relate to, like, the laughing, the jokes, the distasteful comments, some of the the shirts you're seeing people make and some of the other types of whatever it is that people they're trying to sell and make money with some pretty nasty comments or pictures on them. It's just like I can't relate to that. Like I can't. That doesn't make sense to me on a moral level. Because if it was like I don't know, whenever you see people like Dahmer or someone of that nature, it's like as a group of people as a whole, most people would agree that most people like that don't really deserve to be walking the face of the earth anymore. That's not like a heavily debated topic, I don't think, and not worth the debate of someone who would try to, I think, prove you otherwise. But that's besides the point. It just, to see someone whose whole message was just about being a Christian man and interacting in human face-to-face dialogue, uh, instead of settling for violence, someone who was, outspoken against the prospects of war and was against everything that he was trying to push for and didn't want any involvement in wars, and even talked about his disinterest in the bombing of Iran just not too long ago. And so to see someone who was so kind of anti-violence to that extent, and for people to be okay that he was so violently, I mean, not that any sort of any killing would have been awful, but just like I said, just the measure and the scopes of how much it was publicly broadcasted and put out there, and it just the reactions of people. And but then, like I said, it's you run that thing, it's like as much as you hate it as Americans, as Americans, it's like you have access to that freedom of speech. Uh, as disgusting as it is, what you're seeing from some people, but like I said, at the same time, these people you're seeing that are getting fired or whatever the case is, um, in some cases around here, you're seeing, you saw a tattoo shop over there in Mount Vernon that just got shut down, or didn't get shut down, but they were involved in publicly sharing some pretty disgusting. I think they were like some pins you'd put on your shirt, and they had some disgusting comments written on them, and it forced all of their piercers. Someone that I knew that had pierced there for a little while, and um, she ended up moving out, and I believe they lost most of their staff, and ended up shutting down. Last I saw, the one in Mount Vernon shut down, and I guess I got another one, and who knows, that one's probably not going to make it much longer now. And it's like, I don't. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time feeling bad whenever that's the route that she took. Uh, that was the reaction. You know, the reaction's terrible in itself, and then it's like it's almost like kind of like scary in a way to think of like how some people are so publicly um, willing to be open in such a kind of barbaric way. Uh, so yeah, you know, and then whenever you see things like that, and you see people that are willing to step up and again in a very barbaric way, and share these kind of nasty things, and they're willing to do this stuff publicly and lose their whole business over it. You start to kind of think, well, why shouldn't someone who disagrees and thinks that this was a terrible thing, why wouldn't they be willing to step up and sort of, share their thoughts, or talk about it, or, um, and like I said, that's kind of another reason why I wanted to come on here and share my thoughts is, you see people that are so willing to share nasty sides of these things. And I think there should be more people willing to kind of step up and share the positive sides. And like I said, I was someone that watched Charlie for a long time and have followed him for a long time. And uh, always, I admired the ambition and the conviction, there's the belief to hear someone speak with such conviction and believe so much of what they're saying. It's hard to come by. Whenever you hear people talk in a sense of where they really believe what they're saying, and you can feel that on them, right? You can tell, you can catch that vibe off of them. Uh, you can kind of tell whenever someone's kind of bullshitting you a little bit, or maybe uh, they don't really believe what they're even telling you. Sometimes you can kind of feel that, and maybe not even in just like a super like drastic negative way, but sometimes people just like don't have maybe the self confidence. They get kind of like nervous, and so whenever they're talking to you or they're trying to tell you, you may explain whatever it is they're thinking maybe to you, um, in the hopes that maybe you might see it the same way or in the same light. It's like, well, you're gonna have to explain it to me in a way that makes me believe it, right? Like you're gonna have to explain it to me in a way that because if I don't feel that you're really believing what you're the message you're even putting out there, it's like, how do you expect me to believe it? Like I can tell that you're not even really buying into this whole thing, so how do you expect me to really buy into whatever the message is you're proving? So I think I've always kind of been drawn to sort of people that talk with that confidence, or have like you can tell they've done a little bit of their homework, or they can tell that this is something that maybe like really keeps them up at night, or because sometimes you can find yourself being interested in a topic that maybe you wouldn't even be interested in, but it's just being presented to you in such a way that it kind of draws you in, and and makes you feel some type of way, even if you don't even agree. But you're like, well, that kind of moved me a little bit. It made me feel something. I can respect that. You see a lot of people a lot of spineless individuals in today's world. Um, a lot of yes men, a lot of people that are just still sheep and still just following along blindly and still. So I think that was some like not to get off topic, but that was just, but going back to just the way that Charlie, he believed in what he was saying, um, and what he spoke about it with an excitement that you could kind of see in his eye, like it really lit him up, and he really believed in the movement that he was pushing for, and at the end of the day, that's to me, that's a remarkable thing to see, someone that started his whole journey at, back in his teens, and whenever he turned 18, he created this organization and has been pursuing it for the last, 13 years. Um, only being 31 years old, and found himself amongst some of the highest the highest circles he was pursuing in um, his agenda, or whatever you want to whatever you like to call it. And there's something admirable about that, someone at such a young age, and someone that's you think 31, and everything that had already been accomplished. And so it's yeah, it was just I think like most people, it was just kind of um, that gut wrenching, gut punch feeling. Uh, like I said, because whenever you lose someone like that in such a sense of who was, almost symbolic in the sense of he was, I felt like, in the midst of doing his thing, on the campus, in the midst of exercising, free speech to have these discussions, and ultimately gets taken out in the process. It was um, like I said, almost symbolic is a way that's the word that keeps coming back to me. But yeah, just the gut wrenching, you know, that feeling of like, yeah, it just so anyway, um now moving forward a little bit, um the theories are through the roof. It's been a madhouse on social media. People being upset, the FBI, um how much you believe the FBI, or it seems like Cash Patel's not been handling all of this the best. The stories that you're hearing from the shooters, and um, him changing clothes and assembling the rifle on the roof and disassembling the rifle, jumping off the roof, sometimes changing clothes again, and then getting to the woods and reassembling the rifle just to leave it there. And um, right off the rip, I figured once I saw this happen, I knew it was just a matter of time before you started seeing all the conspiracies, or all the people, ready to poke the holes in all the stories and ready to point the finger. And I think if anything, the point of this podcast is being that I just encourage everyone to take a breath, um, step back. I think this is going to be another situation that's going to be very easy to be manipulated and be used to devise the American people more and more than they already are. Um, I think it's going to be something that at least more devised than they already are. And like I said, you're already seeing the people saying it was Groiper who shot him. Some people already throwing around the trans. He was in the with the transgender and this, and it's before we go and just jump into this fire of like hell and ready to tear each other apart. I think it's important to just remember for a second that most people are finding this to be terrible. Most people would agree this was tragic. Most people would agree this should have never have happened. Most people would agree that political violence is not the answer. Most people would agree. Most people agree to all of these basic moral things. Okay, you've got your far this way, your far that way. You've got all. Most people agree it was a tragedy. It shouldn't have happened. It was disturbing the way it was broadcasted. All over for everyone to see. Most people agree to all these things. Uh, so before we're ready to just run and throw a whole group under the bus or ready to just take up arms, whatever the case is, I guess I just encourage everyone to just take a step back, breathe a little bit. Let's get some full details of the story. Right now there's not a lot to go off of. I know I had read this morning. Um, they're having trouble with, he's not wanting to cooperate. This 22-year-old that they have in custody, this Tyler Robinson, taken into custody Thursday night. They're saying they believe that he acted um, you know, I don't know. I find it hard to believe, but then they're also coming out and saying that this 22-year-old was in discussion using Discord and that they had messages of him stating prior to the shooting that he had an opportunity to take Charlie out and he was going to do it. So, him already spreading this, they're saying that they have reports of him spreading or him saying that he was going to be doing this prior to it. So I feel like if that's the case, doesn't, that kind of implicate that he wasn't exactly alone. Um, and again, I know we can't, they're now saying that, again, he has ties. He was dating a trans person, but then depending on who you listen to, like I said, you can fall into the category that people are saying that he was a groyper. Uh, so, which I'm sure he's been told by attorneys and whoever else to not speak. I think he was actually scheduled to have first hearing today, so hopefully there'll be more news coming out. We'll kind of start to get a little bit of picture on what he says once they get to court and they get him before a judge. Um, you know, I'll as more of these updates kind of come out. I think I'm going to be following it kind of. Uh, like I said, because it did, you know, strike something in me. I think, kind of like most people, it did. Um, it struck, just some sort, just kind of where like we're at in the world. Like, it's just like you think of, you see these kinds of things happen in other countries, and everyone wants to think like in America that we're like we just got it all figured out, and then something like this happens, and you're like instantly reminded. You're like, oh, wait a second, we're maybe not quite where we should be at. You like to think that you're sort of past these things, and that it's like most, whatever, like you run for president or whatever the case may be. I'm not saying that presidential assassinations are good or expected per se, but like presidents or world leaders getting assassinated like has happened, right? Like it's documented, it's well known, it's happened, it does happen, it happens all over the world. Okay, so part of me kind of feels like whenever you run for a position like that, not that you should expect to get killed. That's not what we should be expecting at all. But like there has to be a little part of you that just knows that like it's a thing. World leaders and this like have been targets to these kinds of things, to political attacks and assassinations and so forth. But whenever you're talking about someone who was merely, you know, yes, an advocate for, right wing conservatives, and but it really was just using uh, his rights as a U.S. citizen to share what he believed and to share the message that he had spoken to, or that he believed, had been spoken into him. And uh, not that you ever want to see anyone get killed, but whenever you think about someone being killed just merely on the fact of words and what someone was saying and the disagreements that other people may have had, and uh that's where it gets kind of scary, whenever you start are talking about just simply someone trying to spread their message um and share what they believed. And again, especially whenever I find it to be an admirable thing, because you don't see a lot of people anymore that are willing to really step up and share their beliefs and are willing to share what's truly in their heart and what they felt, what they feel speaks to them and is right. A lot of people aren't willing to step up or act on those urges or to speak on those urges. And so hopefully now this will, maybe encourage some people to um, be more willing to step up and speak from their heart and share, and not be so worried about what others, might think, or how they might be perceived from somebody else, or, uh, you know, if that was the case, I wouldn't be doing this podcast at all. If I was worried about how I might be perceived, just because of me sharing my thoughts on what shouldn't be a controversial subject, but to some almost feels like it is. And to me, it doesn't really feel like a controversial subject. Maybe the reasonings behind it might be a little more on the controversial side, but that's not the point of this episode. Um, the point of this just simply, again, that it it should be more, I think, just on a moral standpoint. Whenever we're looking at this situation as a whole, I think that's the way that we should, kind of view this thing as for right now, because, you know, I know people on both sides of the aisle that completely disagree with what has happened and find it to be really appalling what has happened. And so, due to that, I think that showcases just a little bit, again, kind of reinforces a little bit that this is, it's a good versus evil. And at least that's kind of what I think. Um, you've got good people in the world, and you've got evil people in the world, and uh, this is just another case of that. I think so. Um, yeah. So nothing else to really add, um, right now on this episode as far as this goes. Again, I just wanted to share my thoughts, kind of where what I've been thinking on the last couple of days, and sort of what has been on my mind regarding the whole situation, and kind of the response that I think that I hope most of us sort of have, and I hope most of us are able to kind of, like I said, take that step back and kind of allow the dust to settle a little bit before just jumping in and being ready to um, tear one another down. Uh, so yeah, the solo episodes. This one will be coming out today, Tuesday, September 16th, and then I'm thinking about from here on out a little solo Saturday morning show is something I'm hoping to implement to the podcast channel as well. So those will be coming out on Saturday mornings, along with still guest appearances uh, and all of that in the future as well. We have 3 guests that's going to be coming on this weekend, so it's going to be a busy weekend. Lots of content coming out. Looking forward to that. So yeah, that's. I was trying to think if there's any other points I was kind of hoping to add to it. I think that about covers it all. Like I said, I think majority of people are on the same page of on how they're viewing the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and I think don't let the media, don't let mainstream media use narratives to push on you and sort of form opinions about this whole situation um, before we allow all the details to fully come out and kind of get a idea of what really happened and kind of why it happened and the motivations behind it. Um, yeah, so I think that's it. Make sure you guys checking out the SanctuaryPodcast Sanctuary podcast. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify. The Hydrate 1-2 IV Therapy, Riley's IV Business. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram. Shoot them a message. They'll come directly to the house. You get those IVs in. Active Nutrition and Supplements. Use code TheSutton, TheSutton10 at checkout online at activenutritionandsupplements.com. You can also just mention my name if you go in store. There's 2 stores located in Evansville. Go in store. Just mention my name at checkout. Get 10% off. As always, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you so much.